A single word carved into a wooden post, the only trace of 115 colonists who vanished in 1587. A bundle of waterlogged bills on a riverbank, the sole physical evidence from America's only unsolved hijacking. A parking lot where Jimmy Hoffa walked in and simply never walked out. 7 of the most baffling unsolved mysteries in American history share one thing. They left behind just enough evidence to keep experts chasing answers for decades. And the oldest clue is still the strangest. John White sailed into the waters of Pamlico Sound in August 1590, returning to the outpost he had established 3 years prior. It was his granddaughter Virginia Dare's 3rd birthday, and White expected to find a bustling settlement of over 100 English settlers. Instead, his landing party stepped onto a silent shore. The houses had been carefully dismantled, suggesting a planned departure rather than a sudden massacre. On a prominent post at the entrance to the fort, White found the letters Croatoan carved in fair capital letters. On a nearby tree, the letters CRO were etched. There was no cross. That was the pre-arranged distress signal the colonists had agreed to leave if they fled in danger. White knew Croatoan was the name of a nearby island, now known as Hatteras, and the local Algonquin tribe who lived there. Before he could sail south to investigate, a fierce storm damaged his ships, forcing his crew back to England and leaving the settlers behind forever. For centuries, the carved letters remained a dead end. However, excavations on Hatteras Island, 50 miles south, have revealed physical evidence of cohabitation. Archaeologists Eric Klingelhofer and Nicholas Lachetti uncovered 16th-century European brass wire, copper aglets, and distinct English tobacco pipes mixed directly within indigenous farming layers. Radiocarbon dating places these objects precisely in the late 1500s, proving that European and native cultures actively integrated on the island. While this physical evidence strongly supports the theory of peaceful assimilation, it does not provide absolute proof of the entire colony's fate. Other theories persist. Some historians argue the colonists split, with a smaller group fleeing to Hatteras, while others traveled inland, potentially falling victim to disease, starvation, or Spanish raiders. Without written records or definitive DNA matches, the artifacts reveal where some colonists went, but they cannot prove what happened to all of them. On July 4, 1854, a physician named George Washington Lafayette Bickley organized a secret society in Lexington, Kentucky, called the Knights of the Golden Circle. His blueprint was massive: establish an empire of slave-holding territories spanning the American South, Mexico, Central America, and the Caribbean. While Bickley's grand territorial conquests never progressed beyond a failed expedition to the Rio Grande in 1860, the outbreak of the Civil War turned the group into a focal point of Northern panic. Wartime newspapers painted the Knights as a massive synchronized army of subversives operating behind Union lines. The federal government treated the threat seriously. In July 1863, Union forces arrested Bickley in Tennessee, seizing the organization's official brass seal along with its secret bylaws and membership cards. 1 year later, in August 1864, Captain Thomas Hines led 60 operatives into Chicago to free Confederate prisoners at Camp Douglas. The plot collapsed when Union Colonel Benjamin J. Sweet intercepted their mail and arrested the leaders. A month later, on September 19, 1864, conspirators successfully boarded the civilian steamer Philo Parsons on Lake Erie in a failed attempt to capture the Union warship USS Michigan. These real, clandestine operations prompted a formal congressional investigation in late 1864. Yet, the committee's findings and subsequent historical analysis by scholars like David C. Kean reveal a stark gap between rumor and reality. While the group possessed a real structure and extreme secessionist goals, its active membership likely numbered in the low thousands rather than the vast legions claimed by Northern press reports. The Knights of the Golden Circle left behind real weapons and a physical seal, but their greatest impact was the fear they generated. On November 24, 1971, a passenger using the alias Dan Cooper boarded Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305 in Portland, Oregon, bound for Seattle. Shortly after takeoff, he informed a flight attendant that he carried a bomb in his briefcase. He demanded $200,000 in $20 bills, 4 parachutes, and a refueling truck waiting on the tarmac. After landing in Seattle, he traded the 36 passengers for the cash and parachutes, then ordered the crew to fly toward Reno, Nevada. He specified a low altitude of 10,000 feet, a slow speed, and an unpressurized cabin with the landing gear extended. Somewhere over the dense forests of southwestern Washington, during a heavy rainstorm, Cooper lowered the aircraft's aft stairs and leaped into the night. The FBI immediately launched a massive search under the codename Norjack. For nearly 10 years, investigators found no trace of the hijacker or his gear. The first breakthrough came in February 1980, when 8-year-old Brian Ingram found 3 waterlogged bundles of cash buried on Tina Bar, a beach along the Columbia River. The bills totaled $5,800. Their serial numbers matched the master list of Cooper's ransom, providing the only physical evidence of the money outside the plane. This recovery remains the strongest physical link to the crime. FBI specialists analyzed Cooper's clip-on tie and the parachute canopy he left behind, but found no DNA or distinct fingerprints. Special Agent John Detler noted that Cooper likely possessed aviation experience, but lacked the training and gear to survive a drop into a freezing wilderness. In July 2016, the FBI suspended active pursuit of the case, concluding that its resources were needed for higher priorities. Though amateur investigators continued to debate dozens of speculative suspects, the identity of the skyjacker remains a mystery. At 2 p.m. on July 30th, 1975, former Teamsters president Jimmy Hoffa arrived at the Machis Red Fox restaurant in Bloomfield Township, Michigan. He was scheduled to meet Detroit mob figure Anthony Giacalone and New Jersey Union leader Anthony Provenzano. By 2:15 p.m., Hoffa grew impatient. He called his wife to report that the men had not arrived, indicating he would wait a few minutes longer before returning home. That phone call was his last confirmed contact. Though a truck driver later reported seeing Hoffa inside a maroon Mercury Marquis leaving the parking lot, Hoffa was never seen alive again. Because Hoffa was actively trying to regain control of the nation's most powerful labor union, federal investigators focused on a mob-ordered assassination. The mafia had grown comfortable with his successor and feared Hoffa's return would disrupt their access to lucrative Teamsters pension funds. But the investigation quickly became bogged down by a surplus of unverified claims. Over the decades, dozens of tips have dissolved into dead ends. Eyewitness accounts from the restaurant parking lot proved highly unreliable, offering conflicting descriptions of the vehicles and individuals present. Informants, often seeking reduced prison sentences or media attention, pointed to various secret graves. FBI teams systematically excavated Michigan horse farms, New Jersey landfills, and the concrete beneath Giants Stadium. Every dig returned the same result: nothing but compacted soil, household garbage, or animal bones. With key mob figures now dead and no physical body ever recovered, investigators remain trapped in a cycle of speculative tips. The collapse of every new lead only solidifies the mystery, keeping Hoffa's fate permanently unresolved in the public imagination. On July 2, 1937, Amelia Earhart and navigator Fred Noonan flew out of Lae, New Guinea, bound for Howland Island, a tiny Pacific strip measuring just 2 miles long. Reaching it required exact radio direction finding, but antenna damage on their Lockheed Electra 10E made two-way communication nearly impossible. Near the island, the Coast Guard cutter Itasca waited to guide them, but logged only increasingly urgent one-way messages. At 1912 UTC, Earhart reported she was near but could not see land, with fuel running low. Her last transmission at 2013 UTC placed the aircraft on a line of position running north and south, 157, 337. Then the radio went silent. The conventional view is that the Electra ran out of fuel and sank. Aviation historians point out that with overcast skies and low fuel, finding Howland was highly improbable. Though underwater sonar searches have targeted the seafloor nearby, they have found no trace of wreckage. Alternatively, some researchers argue Earhart flew south along her last line of position, landing on the flat reef of Nikumaroro. Subsequent expeditions there recovered potential artifacts, including shoe fragments, pocket knife parts, and cosmetic jars, alongside British colonial files, documenting a partial skeleton found in 1940. Forensic archaeologists state these discoveries are consistent with a 20th century castaway, though critics note that no verified aircraft components have ever been recovered. A third theory claims Japanese forces captured Earhart in the Marshall Islands, though declassified military records contain no evidence of her custody. For experts, the mystery remains a matter of flight physics. The debate over her fate always returns to the same basic limits: her fuel capacity, her navigation instruments, and the massive scale of the Pacific Ocean. On June 11, 1962, prison guards at the federal penitentiary on Alcatraz Island discovered 3 empty beds during the morning head count. In place of the inmates, guards found realistic decoy heads, constructed from a mixture of soap, toilet paper, and real hair gathered from the prison barbershop. The decoy heads had successfully deceived guards during nighttime patrols, buying the escapees hours of a head start. Frank Morris and brothers John and Clarence Anglin had spent months executing a highly organized engineering plan. Using discarded metal spoons and a makeshift drill constructed from a vacuum cleaner motor, they chipped away the moisture-damaged concrete surrounding the ventilation ducts in their cells. Once the openings were large enough, they accessed the utility corridor behind the cell block, climbing to the roof of the prison. Their escape from the island depended on a makeshift inflatable raft and life vests constructed from more than 50 stolen raincoats, vulcanized together using heat from the prison's steam pipes. The physical evidence ends at the shoreline. Meteorological and tide records from the night of the escape indicate a strong ebb tide and water temperatures averaging 54 degrees. In these conditions, swimmers would face rapid hypothermia and strong currents pulling toward the Golden Gate Bridge. The FBI's official investigation, closed in 1979, concluded that while the men likely drowned in the freezing waters of San Francisco Bay, their official fate remains unknown. Over the decades, family members have released photographs and letters claiming the brothers survived and fled to Brazil, but federal investigators state these materials lack the forensic proof required to close the case. The physical challenge of navigating the bay's tides in a rubberized canvas raft remains the central point of the mystery. On the night of December 31, 2010, residents in the small city of Beebe, Arkansas, walked outside to find thousands of red-winged blackbirds littering their lawns, streets, and rooftops. Between 1,000 and 5,000 dead birds lay scattered across a single square mile. The sudden silent downpour of carcasses on New Year's Eve immediately sparked national concern and a wave of speculation. The Arkansas Game and Fish Commission quickly teamed up with the Federal National Wildlife Health Center to launch a systematic scientific investigation. Pathologists conducted full necropsies on a representative subset of the birds, examining their physical condition and organs. Every bird analyzed was in good nutritional health, with no signs of starvation or external predation. Instead, the examinations revealed a consistent pattern of severe, acute physical injuries: fractured skulls, broken wings, dislocated vertebrae, and heavy internal bleeding in the chest cavities. Toxicologists ran comprehensive screens on the tissue samples, testing for organophosphates, carbamates, heavy metals, and common pesticides. The results were entirely negative. Pathologists also ran molecular tests to check for contagious viral pathogens, including avian influenza, West Nile virus, and Newcastle disease, finding no evidence of infection. With poison and illness ruled out, investigators turned to environmental factors. The timing of the event pointed toward a major disturbance. That night, local celebrations featured illegal, professional-grade fireworks detonating near a massive blackbird roost. These loud explosions and bright flashes of light in the pitch black disoriented the roosting birds, sending them into a blind, panic-stricken flight. Lacking night vision, the startled flock flew at high speeds directly into homes, trees, telephone poles, and each other. The impact forces caused the fatal blunt force trauma found during the autopsies. While local internet forums and blogs blame secret weapons testing, chemical spills, or a concurrent fish die-off in a nearby river, the state and federal investigators relied purely on physical data. The forensic autopsy reports and clean toxicological screens dismantled the rumors. By focusing on physical evidence rather than sensational theories, the scientific inquiry resolved the event, demonstrating how human activity can trigger sudden, tragic reactions in the natural world. Our past is defined as much by what we lose as what we keep. Today, in an era of near-total information, these silent gaps prove that some secrets still defy our best efforts. They remind us that history isn't static. It is an active, unfolding investigation. Which of these puzzles do you think we will solve first? Let us know in the comments.